and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I am here with Vic Mattis, my co-host from the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. We've got tons of news, New Hampshire primary. We got to get through the numbers on that, see what the path forward is for all mono awamano.
Yet another new phrase from Getting Hammered.
We got a SCOTUS decision to decipher about the border. Gen Z turns on their Hill bosses, and there's some Barbie discourse, and I regret to inform you that Hillary is involved. We're going to get to all of that, but before that, how's it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Going just fine. I have been doing some pop culture educating at home.
Oh, interesting.
Not for my kids, but for my wife.
Okay. What does Kate need catching up on?
Music videos.
Okay.
Not from now. I don't watch music videos. I have no idea if music videos are still a thing.
I don't even think they get made.
Like if you go to MTV, right?
Right.
It's all like reality shows now, and it started with The Real World. But it used to be videos.
Yeah.
That's why they called it music television.
That was
It's
the
like-
idea.
yes.
Yeah, that was the original idea.
And so from time to time, we'll talk about a song. A song will come on the air, and I'll say, "Oh, great video, wasn't it?" And she'll be like, "I know what you're talking about." And that sort of it dawned on me. Wait a minute. What do you mean you've never heard of this or you've never seen this? And her parents had forbade her from watching because they were told, it's bad. MTV.
Yeah.
Remember in the 80s, MTV was bad.
Oh, yeah,
You're not
yeah.
supposed to watch MTV. Yet her younger brother knows all the videos I'm talking about, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
The key to that sentence is younger brother.
Yes, I think that's always the
Okay.
case in general.
Yeah.
So I was just showing her a video earlier today, but for example, she'll say, "Oh my gosh, Def Leppard's Pour Some Sugar on Me. Oh, that must have been crazy." And I'm like,
No, that's
actually,
just a concert video.
it's just a concert video. Very good, Mary Catherine.
Same era.
And she had never, until we got married, she had never seen Aha's video for Take On Me,
Oh, wow.
which is iconic.
Yeah.
So, I'm in the process of this. Did you watch videos
Oh,
growing up? Was that
for
a thing?
sure. By the way, I should say they do still exist because I can see them in the background of my Spotify app.
Oh.
They often have video accompaniment.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know how full these videos are anymore. And one thing I've heard about the directing industry is that a lot of folks got their start
Oh,
directing music videos and
absolutely.
then they move on to movies.
100%.
And that training ground is not exactly the same anymore.
Oh, okay.
But I do know they exist because they put them on Instagram, and I'll see
Right.
clips that are like, this comes from the music video. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, neat, we're still doing that. But yes, I'm well versed in music videos, particularly of the era that you were talking about.
So a lot of these videos had like actors,
Oh, yeah.
actual actors.
Gary Oldman was in a Guns N' Roses video.
Oh, I got to check
Yeah.
that out. I didn't realize that. I was going to mention the Tom Petty's Into the Great Wide Open,
Right.
which had, it had Johnny Depp,
Ooh, yes, that's right.
Faye Dunaway, who's like the agent, and the girl interest was Gabrielle Anwar, one of my favorites.
Oh, you like Gabrielle.
Love her.
She's a
She's
pretty
about
gal.
3'5".
She's a pretty gal.
She's tiny. She's about the size of an American Girl doll, as it
Was-
turns out. But I loved her in Scent of
Was-
a Woman.
Was she the one in Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken?
Was that a sequel? Is
if
that a
you're-
sequel to Wild Hearts?
If you're a woman of my age, you know what Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken is. It
Okay.
is an amazing
Well, I think of
movie.
Wild Orchid.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Gabrielle Anwar. She was the star of that movie. That
check
movie
it
came
out.
out in 1991. And I should just read the synopsis to
Please.
you. Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. Thrilled by a performance she sees at a fair, Sonora Webster tries to land a spot as a daredevil who rides horses off of high dives.
Never mind. It's not at all what I thought this was going to be.
And that is the plot of that movie that takes place, I believe, in like sort of Depression era America. And at one point she endures a tragic accident, as you might imagine, jumping off of high dives while riding horses.
Yeah, see,
So-
it sort of leads to that. Well, that's
Anyway, if you guys want to check that out,
Thank
that was
you.
that was a tween classic in
Okay.
the 90s.
yes. I will make sure not to
And
check that out.
with the
Thank you.
beautiful Gabrielle Anwar in a 1930s
Yes, no.
swimsuit. Well covered, Vic.
Yeah,
It's not really
no,
up your
it's terrible.
It's not up your
No.
alley.
No, get me to the 60s. Mary Catherine, how are you?
I'm all right. Yes, I'm with you on the music videos. I loved those days. One of the things that I enjoy about my current career is that I get to be buddies with Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, of
Of
course.
VJ fame.
Absolutely.
Of MTV.
She must have great stories.
Yes, who is a libertarian chica who hosts for Fox on various shows, had her own show for quite some time. And she has just fantastic stories from those days, from the heyday
they got to,
of MTV.
And it's like the equivalent of a journalist working at Time Life magazine in the 50s. I mean, you were the kings.
It was
with Sports Illustrated.
She was 90s, like grunge era, and she was the sort of alt chick. So she was on that beat.
That's right. And there were no other. The only other competition was VH1.
Yes,
that was it.
Although Pop-Up Video is still, I would say, a great show. So you reminded me with the younger brother thing that and my parents and my younger brother, if they listen to this, will be like rolling their eyes. my classic oldest sister rage incident upon learning what my younger brothers could do that I could not, because you got to break a lot of barriers.
Yes,
when you're the first kid. And you're a chick, right? So one night I call home from college. Now, when I went to high school, I could not go out on weeknights. It was non-negotiable. Everyone was home by 6 p.m. on weeknights unless you had a sport event. Sure. And that included second semester senior year when I had already been accepted to college. And I had groups of seniors would meet up at the Chili's on a Monday and have a meal together. And I could not do that.
You couldn't do the dinner at Chili's.
I could not. And I was like, guys, I've already gotten into college. Can I please go out to a 6 o'clock dinner at Chili's? The answer was no.
The Chili's contributes to delinquency. That's probably.
That would have probably been the chillest thing, the safest thing I did in high school.
I would say
go to Chili's.
That is a very accurate assessment because I'm a younger brother, and I remember going out to a party, and it was not far. It's in the neighborhood down the street, but it was like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, okay, that's fine. And I remember my sister making a stink about that, saying, gee.
Okay. So I call home from college, and my brother is in like mid-high school, like a sophomore.
Yeah,
maybe.
not even a senior.
And I call home and I say, hey, how's it going? And I talk to my parents for a while, and I was like, hey, is Owen around? And it turns out, no, he's not. He's out of the house. Oh, what is Owen doing? He's at a Weezer concert. And I said, in Chapel Hill, which would have been 15 minutes from our house. Nope, in Charlotte. Charlotte is 2 hours from our home, and it was
city.
A weeknight. And I was like, what is happening? But you know what? That's just the path of the youngest sibling.
It is.
And to his credit, he didn't get into a lot of trouble. He was he like learned from our mistakes, the two older ones' mistakes, and was like, you know what, if I just keep it between the navigational beacons, I feel like they're not going to get that mad at me. So he went down to Charlotte with my other brother, who was not in high school, so whatever, he can do his thing. On a weeknight. On a Tuesday.
Weeknight. Well, it was Weezer.
I know, and he got to see Weezer. I would never have gotten to see Weezer. Weezer would have been out of the question.
Hash pipe. Sorry.
I was like yelling at my parents on the phone, like, I can't believe this. This is a travesty. I, Mary Catherine Ham, would not have even broached the subject of going to a concert in Charlotte on a weeknight. How is this young man ever going to make it to adulthood?
They would not have let you down to Chapel Hill to see the Gin Blossoms. That's how strict they were.
No. In fact, I think one time I contemplated asking them if I could go to a show at the Cat's Cradle. I believe it was Less Than Jake. Yes. Did I listen to silly pop ska bands? I did. Right?
Wow.
Pop, punk, ska.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? If I ask that question, my dad's going to get mad at me that I asked that question.
You weren't even going to bring it up.
And my parents will say, you know what? I guess you missed that opportunity. You miss all the goals you don't shoot, MK. Every shot you don't take.
You know what? It could have been worse. They could have said your brother was at a Fish concert. He's been there since Wednesday.
Oof, yeah. You know what?
It's just been the same song.
He was a good kid.
It's a very long solo. Yes. Okay. Well,
good. I don't begrudge him any of that fun.
No, you don't think about that.
So glad he had it. Okay. And Weezer concert must have been good. Okay.
The Buddy Holly song is great, by the way. And also another great video. because
that
they
was a good one.
CGI'd themselves into Happy Days.
They did.
So it's
There's
like a
so many
combination
iconic.
of like.
We should do a whole
except
show.
for Al from what was Arnold's, and then it was Al. The actor at the time played himself because he still looked the same.
We should do a whole show about our favorite music videos. We should. What people
a 2-hour Getting Hammered
What people
special.
are clamoring for in the year 2024 is a top 20 list of Vic and MK's extremely dated music video choices from 1990.
I'd be
Blind
all over
Melon,
that.
some Billy Idol.
How about Danny Aiello and Papa Don't Preach? Yeah, that was a very pro-life song.
It was. Okay. By the way, that Gary Oldman video was Guns N' Roses' Since I Don't Have You.
Wow.
So y'all can check that out.
Okay.
Should we talk about the news?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. There was a primary in New Hampshire.
There was.
Yes.
Our predictions proved correct.
The primary in New Hampshire, Trump once again broke 50%, which is an important number for him, important threshold. However, Nikki Haley in the 40s, right? Like not crazy far behind. Now, New Hampshire is an open primary or semi-open, which means that unaffiliated voters can vote in either side.
Independents.
Independents can vote. And some of the Trump online presence was like crying foul that Democrats and independents could infiltrate the GOP primary. It's like, well, that's, I think, always been the design of the New Hampshire primary. That's why different candidates perform there better than they do in Iowa, for instance. New. It's not new, but it's like classic Trump team strategy to just know that these rules exist forever, do nothing about them, and then be like, how dare these people take advantage of the rules as they exist and have always existed. So there's a little bit of that going on. Somebody tweeted, smoking gun. Here's an independent voter saying he voted for Nikki Haley. It's like, well, yeah, smoking gun. This works the way it has always worked. At any rate, let's get your impressions first of like, what's the state of the race in this case?
Well, let's see. Trump won by about 11 points. Nikki Haley did not win per se. But she did two things that really got under Trump's skin. The first thing was she beat him to it with the speech, right? She went up, she spoke first. And everybody, the mainstream media, everyone's going to cover her speech. So that's the first thing. The second thing is she basically questioned his mental fitness and says she's not going anywhere.
Yes.
Do you think Trump was kind of wondering if she was going to pull a DeSantis and just throw in the towel and just say, you know what, I don't see a path?
Right.
Because really there is no path at this point. But
and
that's what got him all worked up.
So here's the path, right? The path is this guy's in a lot of danger outside of the primary.
Yes.
And she has, over 15 delegates, I think, to his 30-something at this point, having earned those through this process.
Right.
She earned what every other candidate wanted, which was the head-to-head competition. Here is the first iteration of that, although I would argue there wasn't a ton of time post DeSantis getting out to consolidate in a true sense. But anyway, this is like the first iteration of that. I think it's hard for her to get out before her home state, given that she has a lot of money and a rationale, which is that 40-something% here. Yeah. Some of them, yes, independents. Guess who you have to win in a general election? Independents. Some of them independents turn toward her. South Carolina will be a more traditional Republican state, but it is a state that she governed twice over. So I think it's hard for her to leave before that happens. And she seems to be feeling like she's having fun in this moment. First of all, let's play a little clip of Trump, who wants to say, he keeps sort of saying, like, she keeps declaring victory when she hasn't really.
Yes.
She's come out and said, like, I deserve to stick around, but she hasn't declared victory, but he seems to think she has.
But I felt I should do this because I find in life you can't let people get away with bullshit, okay? You can't. You just can't do that.
If there was ever a man to say that.
And when I watched her in the fancy dress that probably wasn't so fancy come up, I said, what's she doing? We won. And she did the same thing last week, but he was much more angry about it than I was. I said, get up there and you let him know. We are going to win this. We have no choice. If we don't win, I think our country is finished.
So clearly he, I think you're correct that got under his skin a little bit, which is why he's making fun of her dress.
Yes. Mary Catherine, I started to think maybe MSNBC was right about not showing the speeches, not because we need to be told what is truth and what is not, right? We don't need them to curate the news for us, but because I forced myself, to forget the forget-me-not from Arrested Development, the forget-me-not pill. I took it to forget about those 4 years and the rhetoric, and thought, I saw him in Iowa. He gave a very civil, gracious speech, and then it was back to
now we're just doing Joan Rivers fashion police,
coarse, petty.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute, here he is. He's back.
Before we get to Nikki, I will also say that he was after the I don't know if was it right before New Hampshire or right after New Hampshire that he had Tim Scott behind him on stage.
It was after New Hampshire.
Right after New Hampshire.
Yeah,
okay.
It was the same with and Vivek spoke first.
Okay, so he's got Tim Scott behind him, and as always happens, I like Tim Scott, but he endorses Trump, full-throated endorsement. Stands behind him at this event, and Trump, unable to observe any just like minimally normal people niceties, says this. This is the first thing out of his mouth. It's hard for me to even listen to. Go ahead.
Did you ever think that she actually appointed you, Tim? And think of it, appointed, and you're the senator of his state, and she endorsed me. You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's why.
All right.
So awful.
So first of all,
it's just,
First of all, he misspeaks because I believe he says she endorsed me.
Yeah.
But just anyone who jumps in there, just be aware that your ritual humiliation will come at some point. He's referencing the fact that Nikki Haley, when she was governor, appointed Tim Scott to his seat. Right. That is awkward.
Because he wanted to put him in that position of saying, you must really hate her.
Yep.
Doesn't hate her.
Look, I know politics is not beanbag, but sometimes I'm just like, come on, man. All right. And then we have Nikki saying that he feels threatened, which I think is true. Let's hear a little bit of that.
So we got out there and we did our thing and we said what we had to say. And then Donald Trump got out there and just threw a temper tantrum. He pitched a fit. He was insulting. He was doing what he does, but I know that's what he does when he's insecure. I know that's what he does when he is threatened, and he should feel threatened, without a doubt. It's interesting because a few days ago, he was going on and on about me. I mean, for a while. On and on about why I didn't send in security to the Capitol on January 6th. He said it over and over and over and over again. I mean, somebody's got to tell him I wasn't there on January 6th. I've never been at the Capitol working in a job like that, but I think he was a bit confused, and so we'll let that pass. But the thing is, you look at what's happening, and out of everything that he said in his rant, he didn't talk about the American people once. He talked about revenge. He didn't talk about the fact that we've got an economy in shambles and an inflation that's out of control. He didn't talk about the fact that we only have 31% of 8th graders in our country who are proficient in reading. He didn't talk about what we were going to do to get the lawlessness on the border under control. He didn't talk about what we were going to do to bring law and order back to our country. He didn't talk about what he was going to do to help all the wars that we're in and to keep us from going to war. He didn't talk about any of that. And so he'll go on, and even on that day where he was going on and on about January 6th, we talked about, okay, he was having a moment, he was confused, but it also goes back to why I've continued to push for mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75.
So she goes on to say, she listened to his speech, and what he didn't talk about was the problems facing Americans, which is going to be the theme of his campaign, is not talking about those
No,
things.
he'd rather talk about himself when, you have this, first of all, the world is on fire. The border is wide open. Somebody just told me today about an awful incident that happened in Houston regarding involving illegal immigrants and the violating of 2 kids.
Oh,
I mean, really awful. But what is Trump talking about? He's talking about bird brain, as he now, that's the new nickname for Nikki Haley, is bird brain. We're at that
I don't
level.
get that one, but
of,
whatever.
And in the
Her dress.
the dress, and then E. Jean Carroll, the
did we get
because of
into
the defamation suit? So he cannot let any of these things go.
Yeah.
Victory is
it's
right in front of him. How to win is
I know.
it's right there.
I was on
right
with
there.
Hogan Gidley, who's a Trump supporter on NBC, and he was saying, look, the president talks about those things in every speech. And I will grant you that he does touch upon them, right? Mm-hmm. But if you take the balance of his speeches, if he has to address 1, 2, 3, 4 different sets of indictments,
right,
and E. Jean Carroll and his opponents, sometimes the opponents that are already out of the race, that's a lot of burns he has to distribute before he gets to actual problems Americans are facing, or Biden.
It's the utter lack of sort of this self-discipline, self-control that he really needs, because this is a real moment. And so you saw again.
Well, he doesn't need that with primary voters. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
But because I'm a disciplined speaker. No, I lost my train of thought, but I did want to say that the path for Nikki Haley is that you have this very compromised, possibly legal situation for this candidate. This is unprecedented. To keep plugging along and have delegates behind your name that are legit, that are gained through this process, means that if something should happen to the 77-year-old who is facing 91 indictments, you are the person who has some sort of legitimate claim to the nominating process.
Right.
And so if that's the case, why do you want to get out? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, if she somehow were to make it or get as close as she could to the convention, right? That horse trading happens, where delegates, they shift their allegiances depending on what the situation is. As you mentioned, if Trump happens to be convicted, there's already an X percentage of Republicans who say under no circumstances they're going to vote.
Which I have a feeling that percentage is just going to get smaller. Like Trump's just going to be like, they're after me again, and everybody will be like, well, in that case,
that might. But if he does, there's also a larger number who say that if he's convicted, they cannot vote for him. Yeah. So you're right, that does exist, but she'll need money to sort of just have her push her along. But it's going to drive him nuts.
Well, this kind of talk, particularly from a woman, I do not think is going to sit well with him. It's going to rile him up. Now, to some extent, even
Hannity, by the way, thought it was a bad speech. He said that I wish he would have talked more about winning and more about Biden than her.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's getting under his skin. This is the issue moving forward, is that, look, I think there's plenty of rationale for her to stay in the race. She has resources. She has not only her own people on the ground, but again, Americans for Prosperity Action on the ground with lots of money and lots of people who do door knocking in a place like South Carolina, in a lot of states that might be in play in Super Tuesday, where a lot of people can win who are not Donald Trump, and did in 2016 in that contested primary.
I didn't think, by the way, that after Iowa and New Hampshire in 2020 that Biden was going to be the nominee. South Carolina saved him. And that surprised me, but I can no longer remember if that was a surprise for many people or pollsters or whatnot. I mean, I know the turning point was Jim Clyburn's endorsement.
Yeah, I don't think it was a surprise for Democratic higher-ups who were like, Jim,
the fixes
save us from Bernie.
Right. But for a lot of us, I thought, especially after New Hampshire, when is this guy going to win one? Now, Trump is, of course, in the other position, which is a much better position to be in, because no Republican in modern times has lost a nomination after winning both Iowa. It usually gets split up, Iowa and New Hampshire, and then it's sort of the primary begins in earnest after.
By the way, just a quick note on New Hampshire. That is why Biden wasn't even on the ballot for Democrats in New Hampshire. He had to be written in because the Democratic Party and Biden, in the Biden era, decided it would reward South Carolina for having given Biden the nomination last time around. They also, this is a rare instance perhaps of the living up to their values. They think that Iowa and New Hampshire are too white. So they want to have South Carolina sort of carry the banner with a more diverse Democratic coalition.
It is not a surprise, their fixation on all things equity-related.
Got to do a little racial bean counting in order to pick your first state.
That's the thing on the other side. I did want to bring this up because it came to my mind, something you had mentioned in the last show, which is listening to Trump and how I'm like, okay, let's talk about the positive and really the crisis, at the border. And he talked about the border. You're right. It's true. He'll
mention these things.
But then he goes back to her saying that she won and she didn't win and the fancy dress. And he's in his mind, I'm like, what is he getting at over here? And it reminded me, first of all, of my friend Larry Miller, right? He has a friend who, when they go out with couples, very civil, very nice, couples going out, and the friend would say, I shouldn't say this, but, and then bleep it. And he'll say that and then just go right into it. And I just thought every time Trump kept going back to it, all I thought was F.I.W.B.
Yeah.
That's it. He's like, should I bring this up a fourth time? Oh, F.I.W.B.
We're telling all the olds, the new trends, the new lingo. Quickly, a couple things to close out our 2024 section. Yeah. There was a moment that I very much enjoyed because I do think it is one of my more strongly held opinions that Trump is cheating voters by not debating. And he is continuing to do that. And the voters don't seem to care. No. So I still believe
the strategy worked.
I still believe that it's not good practice, but here we are. Haley has a little something to say about that.
Trump claims he'd do better than me in one of those tests. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But if he thinks that, then he should have no problem standing on a debate stage with me.
Look, satisfying. Does it work for peeling off Trump voters? Mm-hmm. Works for me. Yeah. It's a different demographic. But this is part of the trick of moving to a general election is that Trump is going to spend his time beating up on Nikki Haley and the people who might support Nikki Haley, who are the exact kind of people who might be earnable by a GOP general election candidate if that person were interested in convincing them. But not so much.
No. And again, it served him well by not participating in any of those debates.
I know.
Even though everybody warned him that, oh no, everybody said it's really bad if he doesn't do this, and instead the candidates went after each other, shredded themselves, into tiny pieces, and then Trump remained above the fray, by and large, with the exception maybe of Chris Christie. That was the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're leading your opponent by 20, 30 points, like Trump is over Nikki Haley, debating can
doesn't make sense.
Debating
it can only hurt you.
Could only hurt you.
Yep. No, that's correct. Strategically, that is correct.
And maybe, I don't know, in a general, I don't know if Biden wants to debate Trump either.
No, of course he doesn't.
It's going to be a very...
Of course he doesn't.
Let's just get to November.
By the way, just to get a gauge on how much the Trump camp would like to convince people to get behind him, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, "This is the referendum on the Republican Party, and that's something I'll be saying in my speech tonight. This is a true change for the Republican Party. It says that not only do we support President Trump, we support his policies, and any Republican that isn't willing to adapt these policies, we are completely eradicating from the party. So it's up to Nikki Haley what she does." Okay. I would just note that in 2020, 2018, 2022, those underwhelming results, those big L's, come from eradicating people from the party that don't completely just agree with Trump.
Yeah.
So that's what happened to the suburbs. And if you would like to play in national elections, you should not eradicate them from the party. That's...
Well, and this also adds fuel
not strategically correct.
Yeah, to Nikki's case here, which is, the track record is not great.
No.
After 2016, right? So.
Well, I would just say, if he ends up the nominee, count on, if you would like him to win the general election,
Mm-hmm.
Biden convincing people to vote for Trump by being horrendous versus Trump convincing people to vote for Trump by being something better than he currently is.
Right. You know, I mean,
And it could happen, but
it's also interesting because there are all these, everyone's talking about the warning signs for Trump, right? Because, you have the independents who, if they join forces with Democrats, the number of Americans in general who identify themselves as Republican is smaller than the number who identify themselves
we
as
have a
Democrat.
smaller pool to start with. Yeah.
So if you combine those two, then the Republicans are in a lot of trouble, and you have other Republicans who then, adding to that, would just object for the reasons I mentioned, voting for him in any case, or if he gets convicted, they'll stay home. Biden is facing a similar problem with his key demographics, particularly minorities.
Yep.
Which is not to say that African Americans or Hispanics are going to turn on Biden and suddenly vote for Trump.
Right.
They too may just stay at home.
Or,
and so it's a big.
Or there are people. I mean, this is the thing about non-white voters, is that it turns out Republicans, having historically had such a dearth of those voters, don't have to turn very many of them if they are in strategically helpful places.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so those margins matter to Democrats a whole bunch. Now, what I would say is that a lot of the non-white voters who might consider Trump newly in 2024 because of the Biden economy probably live in cities that are in blue states. Yeah. And that's not going to change the electoral map. Although I should not shade the fact that he could earn those votes, because you've seen that in polling. Yeah. Okay. One last thing. Let's go to the competition, which is Joe Biden. He was in Virginia this week doing a rally called Restore Roe. That was behind him. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do that because you're not on the Supreme Court, and there's no Roe case before the Supreme Court, and that's not really how this works.
I guess bring back the packing strategy.
I guess they mean legislatively. I don't know. Yeah. At any rate, that was the theme of the rally. Biden is in Virginia, and he's, as you know, they're going to run on the importance of preserving democracy because Donald Trump is the greatest threat to that.
Right, he's a denier.
Election denialism is the cardinal sin.
Yeah.
So let's hear what he had to say to introduce himself in Virginia.
Hello, Virginia. And the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
The real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
Okay.
Terry McAuliffe is not the real governor of Virginia. There are no allegations or even fantasies about any sort of controversy with the vote in Virginia in 2021. Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican, is the governor of Virginia.
A popular one too, among both.
Very popular one. I believe his approval is 55 plus right now.
Yeah, the Washington Post had a glowing story about him working across the
on
aisle.
the strength, by the way, of the suburban voters that Marjorie Taylor Greene would eradicate from the party. He won that election. Now everybody says it was just a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was one of those rude things that people say that they then laugh at and then call it a joke. It's not a joke. If you actually think that election denialism is a problem, which I'm with you, man. Mm-hmm. You can't do this.
Here's what I think. I think what Biden I can't imagine I'm going to say that what I think he's thinking, because I don't know if he thinks he knows what he's thinking.
Good luck.
But thank you. I think what Biden wanted to say was, and the guy who will always be governor to me, Terry McAuliffe. I think that's what he wanted to say.
That would be fine.
Or
that would be affection for your friend.
Yeah, that's right. Or he does think that the election was stolen, or he doesn't know there was an election.
Fair enough.
He might
still think Terry McAuliffe is the governor.
My good friend from the Palm, Terry. I don't know what he was doing hanging out at the Palm. He should be in Richmond.
I forgot you ran into him at the Palm.
Whole other story.
Oh, that was
whole
good
other story.
times.
Do you think as a result of this, he's going to end up having to go back to campaigning from the basement? Because he looked, he's exhausted. Also, by the way, really quick, so that's the first question for you, is you're going to go back to the basement.
Okay.
The second thing is, if you looked at that rally, why does it look like a screen? It was like a green screen in the background. Were they really there? It was bizarre looking. Everything looked bizarre.
It's just like the moon landing, Vic.
Well,
this is directed by Kubrick, It's actually, no, in this era, they wouldn't have Kubrick. They would direct it. It would be a scam directed by Greta Gerwig because she deserves it. And we're going to get to that later.
That's a great transition. But okay, fine. Maybe the whole thing was done in the basement, like Wag the Dog style.
Oh my gosh. And they just brought in a bunch of people to put on a screen.
Yeah, that's fine. People always wonder why was there no blast crater when the lunar module, when it landed.
This is what I'm saying.
Just saying.
This is what I'm saying. Anyway, 2024, race to the bottom. Okay. Should we do some SCOTUS deciphering?
Yeah.
Okay, if I understand this correctly, and I might not, just putting that out there. There's a lot of news to keep up with. Mm-hmm. Texas, due to the unprecedented numbers of illegal aliens crossing the border on a regular basis, overwhelming the Border Patrol, has at times called in the Texas National Guard to work at the border, has employed razor wire or concertina wire to make it harder to cross the border, to deter people. And then, of course, because it's the Rio Grande and things are dangerous, there have been various losses of life at the border that the federal government is sort of trying to, in a public relations sense, pin on Texas, which is not, to my mind, fair, even though we, of course, all want to mourn unnecessary loss of life.
It's terrible.
Some could argue unnecessary loss of life is being caused by the fact that you've created a magnet that brings people here. Yeah. We can't deal with the capacity. However, they put up the concertina wire. The federal government says to the courts, the federal courts, hey, you got to stop them from putting up this wire. A circuit court says, yes, we will stop. Yes, enjoined. Texas can no longer put up this wire. That goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court knocks that out and basically says, go back to what you were doing before. Now, a lot of people are characterizing this as Texas being rebuked, but Texas wasn't really being rebuked. No. What they said is that the federal government can't. Oh God, I'm losing.
Okay.
You help me.
All right. You were almost there.
I was?
You were almost there. Yeah.
I lost it right at the end.
The Supreme
Court.
I'm
like Rick Perry in a debate.
This is not like, this is, yes. What is it? The 4 pillars? He said the 3 pillars, and it's like 2. And then I forgot. Oh, it was horrifying. No, it's not like that at all, Mary Catherine.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court did not render a verdict.
Right.
Okay. This is not like the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
There was nothing written that came with it. It was just a vote.
All they did was they vacated an injunction, right?
That's what I was looking for.
They vacated the injunction. Okay. So the Fifth Circuit, and I believe Kyle Duncan, the judge, was explaining that it was within Texas's right because they got to protect this. They have a duty to protect. They are also constitutionally bound to protect their state from these illegal incursions. And we need to remind people, what is happening is illegal. It's terrible. Yes. And there are millions of people. They're not documented. We have no idea we have no control over who is in this country. No. So that includes nice people, hardworking people, women, children, and also dangerous people, bad people. And I mentioned a crime that happened earlier. And there's numerous other instances like this, obviously. And the Supreme Court in a 5-4 ruling basically vacated. And there are multiple lawsuits happening right now. So between Texas and the federal government.
Right.
And so that all has to resolve itself as early as March. For example, Texas wants the right to have its own law enforcement officers arrest and I think even deport illegals coming in as opposed to being within the boundaries, within the realm of Department of Homeland Security. Right. That's one thing. And then the other thing, of course, is the razor wire is part of a larger issue as well. So Beto O'Rourke, our good friend Beto, he had sent out on X a harsh criticism of Governor Abbott of Texas and saying that,
Remind me, he doesn't have a job, right?
No, not anymore. Not for some time now.
Yeah.
He's not running for anything. That Texas and Abbott are defying the Supreme Court's decision. There was no.
Because vacating the thing means that Texas can go back to doing what it was doing, and the federal government can also react against that, correct?
Yes. Did Beto ever wonder why there was no majority opinion? For example, there's no opinion for majority. There's no dissent. It's just back to you. That's all they're saying.
This is how you know that the misinformation reporters are a scam.
Yeah.
Because if the misinformation reporters were interested in actual misinformation, SCOTUS reporting would be number one on the list. Like,
right.
no one understands what overturning Roe did. They all refer to it, even in news reports,
like
abortion's
as
a national abortion ban,
Yeah.
which is not what happened.
Right.
This they refer to as Texas defying the SCOTUS, which is not what's happening.
And I'm going to forget one of the other lawsuits has to do with the buoys.
Yes.
Along the Rio Grande.
Yes.
And there is the back and forth between Texas and the federal government has to do with deaths that occurred because of the buoys. Texas says Border Patrol was not clear that that's why they needed to have them removed to save these people.
Right.
And the other thing is Border Patrol insists that their authority is not just the border itself, but about 25 miles inland.
Okay.
So that is an issue right now. So all this is pending litigation.
Well, and so for their part, a lot of these things, when we have tragic loss of life, it is A, coyotes, B, dangerous situations, C, just overwhelming numbers of people.
Yeah. And drugs.
As Abbott notes in his legal letter, sort of his public letter about this, under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. He goes back, there's another part who says the federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states. I mean, them's just facts, man.
Yeah.
They don't want to enforce them, but they do have a duty to do that, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he has smashed records for illegal immigration. Ron DeSantis did chime in on this.
Biden is going after Texas, saying that they must remove fortifications from their border. They put wire, they put things to keep people out. Biden's saying you got to take that down to let people come in illegally, which is just crazy. And I remarked that if the Constitution was originally understood to mean that a state could not protect itself against an invasion, if the federal government could force a state to allow an invasion, the Constitution would have never been ratified in the first place. Texas would have never joined the Union when it did.
He goes on to say, if you read Federalist Number, which is a very Ron DeSantis moment, I enjoy it.
Smart guy.
I enjoy it. So he chimed in on this, as did many other Republican governors who are saying, look, the states have resources to deal with these things. If they're not going to enforce the law, we're going to have to take steps.
Yeah.
Now, again, I used to be much more moderate on immigration. This posture by this federal government has turned me more hawkish. And to me, this is a very sensible position.
Yeah. Again, you're talking about the millions of people who are coming over. The message that it sends, of course, is why wait, in some cases, years to enter this country, right? I mean, that's the legal way to do it. You just cross over here, and they have no idea who's coming in. So, I mean, again, that seems to be the
By the way,
problem.
and this is like obviously a personal beef of mine, but the Biden administration is currently considering rules and regulations that would absolutely destroy the au pair industry
closer
in this
to home
country, which is a form of childcare, live-in childcare that comes from young student-aged people, usually who come to America to work with families and live with them. This is a solution that many turned to after the shutdown policies of COVID ruined a lot of an already precarious child care situation. And now they want to classify au pairs in a different way to make them basically full-time employees that would get full-time benefits, which, doesn't account for like the room and board and all these other things. Point being, a form of very helpful legal immigration, they're just going to destroy, possibly. Yeah. But illegal immigration, let the party continue.
I mean, what is so the Biden administration's message, to Texas, for example, is remove the wire, lift the buoys. We don't have an answer how to stop this, by the way. And this is your problem. And don't bust them or fly them to,
never that.
To our other cities. You don't want that to happen. So just keep them all there. But if they're, sight unseen.
By the way, their message to me is get an illegal nanny, Mary Catherine, don't do it legally.
Let me ask you,
that's the Biden's
do you think an au pair would ever work for somebody who did not have kids?
That is not within the scope of the program.
Okay, look, I'm going to look into that.
Okay.
Just fine. I'll look into it myself.
Alrighty. Okay, enough about that.
Yes.
All right, shall we go to some Gen Z critique?
Oh, yes.
Oh, we love to go after
yes,
the youngs, even though our beloved producer, Jennifer, is a cusp Gen Z gal.
Oh, she's
a hard worker.
She's practically Gen Z alpha. She's so young. Isn't that the term, Gen Z alpha?
But she
That's right. She was
she
born in
gets it
2010.
done, man. She
Yes.
gets it done. She doesn't truck with any of this nonsense.
She has a heart of an Xer. She has a heart of an Xer.
Okay. Young Congress aides publicly defy bosses, upending tradition. Representative Henry Cuellar's top staffer in his Laredo office welcomed the chance to work for the conservative Democrat, despite the fact that they came from different parties and managed one of the worst paid offices in Congress. But Cuellar's vote against Republican-led legislation barring transgender girls from participating in school athletics from women and girls was a bridge too far for Jose Sanz, Cuellar's district director. So Sanz resigned and weeks later announced a bid for the Republican nomination to challenge Cuellar in November. It goes on. Congressional staff, other congressional staff, and these are the ones that tick me off. Organizing on the Hill. This guy had an objection, resigned, runs. That's legit.
Yeah.
That ain't dirty pool. We're fine with that.
Yeah.
Organizing on the Hill. Perhaps the most prominent example of staffer activism in recent years is the creation of the Congressional Workers Union. 18 offices of members of committee staff have unionized since the House voted in 2022 to protect aides who collectively bargain. The union is in part the product of younger, more tech-savvy staff who have begun to challenge their bosses online. Aides have exposed toxic lawmakers publicly, especially on the anonymous social media forum Dear White Staffers. That sounds like a harassment
You're right there.
equity lawsuit to begin with, and leverage the visibility into hostile work environments to petition for better and more transparent pay and workplace protections. And then, of course, you have them literally protesting their bosses outside the Capitol, outside the White House, because they disagree about policy. Again, the first example, no surprise it's a Republican working for a Democrat, did the sane thing, which is you say to your boss, I can't do it. I can't follow your...
Out of principle.
You're the one they voted for, not me. I got to move on. Fine. The people who say, I can't handle what you're voting for. The people voted for you. I don't care. You're ticking me off. I'm going to protest, sometimes anonymously, your legislation.
For example, against the war in Israel.
Yes,
right?
this is a huge one.
In Gaza.
Right.
And there was a petition signed by hundreds, if not thousands, of unsigned. So if they're anonymous, what do they sign on that petition? Did they just write anonymous?
X or something? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Hispanic staffers want Congress to provide a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. LGBTQ staffers have called out House lawmakers for denigrating the transgender community. Staff associations representing staffers of colors oppose legislation eliminating the House's diversity and inclusion office. It's like, guys, someone fire them.
But I'm going to
fire
assume,
them.
I assume this is happening in Democratic staff,
Yes.
Democratic offices.
It's
because if that's the case, they had it coming. They engendered this.
Yes, this is the problem, and I know, I sound like the jerk face. Fire them. Yeah. Let them be martyrs. Yeah. Stand up to them.
No, they want their job. They want the benefits.
They want it both ways, right?
They want it both ways.
They want to do the job. They want to castigate their bosses. Look, I dislike members of Congress as much as the next angry staffer, okay? But you have a job to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You signed on to that job. One of the reasons I don't work on the Hill is because I have a big mouth and I have beliefs, and my beliefs do not always align with people in office, and I would find it uncomfortable for me to do that job, right?
No, I cannot fathom doing that.
Yes. But you know what I don't do is throw a tantrum on the Hill because I signed up for a job I can't do.
No, but okay, so the first thing that came to my mind was in the 1970s there was a kids show called Kids Are People Too. There was a chimp on that show. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it come out at the end. There's that, that movie, that horror movie that came out, and there's a terrible scene where the chimp goes insane. But the in any event, that's how they feel. Like, hey, we need to be heard, and they feel this way.
Yeah.
The second thing, Mary Catherine, is do Do you think that they want it both ways because they're used to getting it both ways because it goes all the way back to their parents who coddle? Do you think it's a parent situation? Bad parents? Does it go back to the coddling of the parents?
Far be it from me, because I don't know how my kids will turn out when they're employees to cast aspersions. But look, there's clearly something. There's a glitch here. But part of the glitch is, I will say this, I can't speak for all of their parents. I can speak for adults in these organizations. Often these kids are adults, but they aren't acting like adults. The adults in charge need to tell young people this is unacceptable. If you don't do that, they will continue to think it's acceptable and continue to work within that incentive structure. I think, yes, in their colleges, they were often treated like they're in charge. Everyone has lost the spine to just tell a 21-year-old, you're wrong.
Right. No,
you don't have any leverage here.
They're not used to having anybody disagree with them at all. Right.
And I feel like just as I wrote in my book, End of Discussion, available on Amazon.com in 2015, an underused phrase is, your concerns are noted. That's it. Go back to your job. That's it. It doesn't need to go any further than that. You have no power. Go back to your group house.
Like I said, they
drink out of a red Solo cup. Live your life.
They're reaping the whirlwind. So there you go.
I bet those kids don't know anything about music videos.
Really good ones.
All right. Oh, the Barbie discourse.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the Barbie discourse. We have to talk about this, even though yesterday I just tweeted. So I'm going back on a promise. I said I simply can't do the Barbie Hillary snub crossover discourse.
Yes.
But we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, even if you're rooting for them now, you can't. But go ahead, explain. What happened? What happened?
So here's the big deal. Barbie, the movie, was a huge blockbuster hit. Really surprised people. Oppenheimer and Barbie both surprised people in completely different ways. I saw Barbie. I enjoyed it. I thought parts of it were quite clever and cool.
So did Kate said the same thing.
Set looked great. Pretty interesting story, even though it hit me over the head a couple times, more than needed. Greta Gerwig was the female director of the Barbie movie. The beautiful Margot Robbie was the lead, and then Ken was played by Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling has been nominated for Best Supporting or is it Best Actor?
Best Actor.
Best Actor for Ken.
I could be wrong. Could be Supporting Actor.
Okay. At any rate, he's been nominated in his category. Margot Robbie has not been nominated as the actress. Greta Gerwig has not been nominated for Best Director. Okay. However, Greta Gerwig was nominated for writing the screenplay, and the movie was nominated for its set design, I believe, which was really, really cool. So it's not like they were completely snubbed.
Right.
And also, Ken was the star of that movie. I'm sorry, everyone.
Well, I'll take your word for it because I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Barbie received 8 Academy Award nominations. So first of all, how much of a snubbing is that? Gosling, of course, knowing that he's going to take heat for this and being a very socially capable human, he writes a whole essay about
defense of his co-workers.
He says there is no Ken without Barbie, and there is no Barbie movie without Greta Gerwig or Margot Robbie, the two people most responsible for this history-making, globally celebrated film. No recognition would be possible for anyone on the film without their talent, grit, and genius. To say that I'm disappointed that they are not nominated in the respective categories would be an understatement. So, classy from him to stick up for them. Also,
sure.
If you don't, you are getting slaughtered.
Yeah.
So, then Hillary enters the chat, guys.
The one and only.
Greta and Margot. While it can sting to win the box office but not take home the gold, your millions of fans love you. You're both so much more than Kenough, which is a nod to the film. Hashtag Hillary Barbie.
Did somebody write that for her?
That hashtag is not going to hunt. We're not doing it.
Did somebody write that for her? Do you think she saw the movie and said, I'm going to do this? Trump style. No, Trump would do it himself.
I don't know, man.
Is it also, it's veiled, isn't it? It's a very thinly veiled reference to losing the electoral
winning
vote
the
versus the popular vote.
Yes.
this
Yes.
is all about?
That's
is
what
it's
this
all
is about.
And are people celebrating this now, and then they're going to actually just give them the Oscars now because Hillary said so?
That's how it works. I don't know
Okay.
if you know that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
She just has to say that.
Look, I don't think Barbie was terribly snubbed. It certainly wasn't snubbed by the people who watched the movie. Okay. I think Greta Gerwig deserves to be nominated for things. Perhaps you could argue that there should be more room for directors in there. But like, Hillary.
Yeah. No need for
You're
her
so
to get,
cringe.
No
You're
need
so
for her
cringe,
to
Hillary.
get, no need for her to get involved. That's true. So I can understand not being happy with Greta Gerwig not getting nominated.
Right.
But when it comes to the Oscar for Best Actress, there are 5 women who are nominated.
Right.
That suggests that one of these other women is not deserving. If you wanted Margot Robbie, and I haven't seen most of these shows, so I'm
that's
not
a
going
good
to say.
point. Who
so,
is
I mean,
nominated?
They're all women, so and I'll tell you who I'm. Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon, written by my old friend David Gran.
Okay.
The book, and this is the movie directed by Martin Scorsese. I haven't seen the movie, but I will root for Lily Gladstone because she would be the first Native American to receive an Oscar since Sachin Littlefeather.
Wow.
Who actually turned out not to be Indian. I think she was Italian. And she didn't...
That happens so often, it turns
does,
out.
as you
Elizabeth
just
Warren.
Right, right. The guy with the tear, the Indian with the tear, was not actually Indian. And in fact, Sachin Littlefeather did not receive an Oscar for her performance. She had received it on behalf of Marlon Brando in The Godfather, and she wanted to bring to the world the plight of Native Americans.
She accepted on behalf
behalf, but of course she was, again, herself Native American. But Lily Gladstone, all for her. I get this whole thing has been going on since like Oscars. Remember hashtag Oscars so white?
Yes.
The problem.
By the way, I would say that to Hollywood, please stop coming after us.
Pandering? Oh.
Please stop criticizing us until you've got your own house in order.
Yeah.
Like if you're not meeting your equity goals, just like leave us alone.
And the equity goals. It's not again, all on an equal footing, and then whoever you choose. But this goes all the way back, by the way, to Do the Right Thing. I remember this at the time when it was not nominated, and it's a great movie. But I felt at the time that every presenter, there was less pressure for them to mention and throw shade at the Academy for not mentioning Do the Right Thing, and everybody had to stand and clap. Okay, I get that, but you get to the point now where if they push it so hard that it actually hurts the reputations of a lot of these movies or actors or directors, because then it gets in people's minds that the only reason why is because there's a requirement. This reminds me of, for example, the NFL rule, right? Where if you want, who you want as your coach, you must interview a minority coach, an African-American coach, even if we all know who you want. That's really insulting to the African-American.
Yeah, which is why, by the way, black coaches, including like the Tampa Bay coach recently, was like, I don't really want to answer your like gross questions about my race. Yeah, can we just talk about football?
Right.
So
it's the identitarianism it's already the death of us.
Yes.
You can say it's going to be the death of us. It already is.
Yeah. I would say also that the nominating process for actress, excluding Margot Robbie, has perhaps a bit to do with the bias against comedies at the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
Because Barbie was lighter than Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, and Anatomy of a Fall, among others, right? And I do think that's a problem. I think there are comedies that are worth giving these giant awards to. There are also, historical disparities that are worth considering when you're voting for these things. But we cannot at every award show, have a perfect encapsulation of the populations of America reflected in the nominees. Like, that's just not going to be realistic.
Right.
So, at any rate,
I have this image.
Oppenheimer winning for the white guys again. Look, it was a good movie.
It wasn't really well represented, the Manhattan Project. I'll tell you that much.
It was not wide diversity.
That's true. They were. I don't know how many Catholics were on the Manhattan Project. I'll bring that up. Joking. Okay.
Oh, one last piece of entertainment news. Jon Stewart will be anchoring The Daily Show again on Monday nights, I believe once a week, during the 2024 election. Now, a lot of people are saying, so Jon Stewart, the guy who presided over a lot of the sort of snarky, argument-free, policy snobbery and politics snobbery of the past 20 years, while helming The Daily Show, is going to come back and survey the wreckage that he had a part in creating. I don't have that negative a take on it, because it's not like The Daily Show has been good for the past couple of years.
Now, they've been guests, has they been just on a rotation? The Daily Show?
Yeah, for right now it has been after
comedians
what was his name? I'm losing his name.
John Oliver?
No, the last guy who hosted. Trevor Noah.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Sorry.
After Trevor Noah left. However, what I would like to see, Jon Stewart is a crotchety old man now. And crotchety old men can get surprisingly based. And Jon Stewart just did just that in that famous clip where he, on Colbert's show, surprised the hell out of him by saying, like, gee, where did the Wuhan virus come from? Could it have been from the Wuhan lab that works with coronaviruses?
Right.
Bring just a teaspoon of that to The Daily Show in 2024. And my standards are low. I will be happy. So that's my message to Jon Stewart.
They should have had Bill Maher.
Just put the two of them together.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
By the way, apologies to Jon Stewart. He is 61 years old, which isn't quite old man, but he's crotchety and gray-haired. Let me just say that.
He's not using the just for men.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram, where you can see me dress up yet again in an embarrassing outfit for my kids. Although I have to say, I have raised apparently very well-adjusted, self-confident kids who are like, you look all right, let's just do it. I'm like, what? This is supposed to be mortifying. It's mortifying to me and not to them. Anyway, that's how they get me back. Make the bit work, girls. All right, check that out. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.